Welcome to the Quick 10 podcast, brought to you by Trac, focusing on all things FedCon and cyber defense from different perspectives and different personalities, all in 10-ish minutes. Here's your host, Derek White.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Quick 10 podcast. I'm your host, Derek White, here in Tampa, Florida. We've been sitting here all day. Tampa. Yeah.
We're here.
Not hot and humid Tampa, though. Nice, beautiful Tampa.
It's hot right here where we're sitting.
This seat is...
we
picked the worst spot to do this because it is very steamy. But we are at a CMMC conference called Cuick as it's called for some. And it's busy, it's crazy. It's been a great conference, sold out. But I'm joined here by Steven Molter from IntelliGRC, and say a few things about what you guys do, let people know what your role is, all that kind of fun stuff, and then we'll roll through some fun conversation I think we're going to have here.
Sure, yeah. Steven Molter from IntelliGRC. IntelliGRC is a B2B SaaS application helping primarily DIB contractors, although as everybody knows, that's about to expand quite rapidly, but helping DIB contractors kind of organize their thoughts when it comes to CMMC, gather evidence, generate their SSP, perform internal self-assessments, but also prepare evidence to be delivered in the format that C3POs from our experience like to see it in. So, I mean, we have a range of integrations and things like that we're trying to really prioritize, but yeah, that's our main bread and butter. And we also do services to help companies through their assessment journey. And actually we oftentimes we'll represent, kind of like lawyers, represent them for their assessment. So that's going to be crucial for the conversation we're about to have.
Yeah. And you guys have been around, so you're not new and just jumped in and started ambulance chasing. So you guys have been around, which is great. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about what we were just talking about when we were stepping aside. You have some recent experience on a CMMC Level 2 assessment now that those are happening, and you have some things to share about how that went for one of your customers.
Yeah, I mean, so we did our first JSVA back in, I'm wanting to say 2022. 2022 was
one of the early ones.
Yeah, it was actually one of the first ones that went through the JSVA, and so they got a 110. Very, very like fundamentally experience building things for my life when it comes in my career. And that was with Cuick Solutions, Amir Onman's company. And it was awesome. Like it was wonderful. And then we went through another assessment about a year and a half later, completely different experience. It was the assessor was coming from a different background, a heavily RMF background. So, and acknowledged that was his bias. And as anybody knows, RMF is vastly different than CMMC, although there's some relations, but when you try to pull in those requirements in, it can get a little messy. And then this recent one that we were talking about right now was yet another vastly different experience than the experience that we had 2 years ago. So one of the primary frustration is how quickly things totally unrelated to the changes that came from the final 32 CFR and getting codified, how quickly the perspectives from the assessor and the depth in which they assess changed. I mean, I was happy in one sense because it meant that they didn't dig too much into the company that we supported. But from a taxpayer, the person who loves CMMC and knows the scoping guide well and very intimate with it, it was kind of absurd. It's kind of absurd, the shallowness of the assessment.
Talk a little. Yeah, I was going to say, without sharing too much, what would that mean to somebody? Let's just assume that someone's watching this right now that's not an into the weeds, ones and zeros, deep dive, and they hear something like that. What does that mean to say it's a small company? Say it's somebody who's really, really concerned about the overall cost here. Not a cost of how can we trim down our overall cost, but this is like, we need to figure out how much it's going to cost to get there, maintain it, pass the assessments and costs, right? Like what does that mean to them?
Yeah. For like a small business, looking at this and hearing my words and hearing my frustration about just the variance, the inconsistency, I guess is what I'm saying. Um, you know, I wouldn't be afraid from an OSC's perspective, because it does truly seem like the assessors, or at least some of them, are laxing it. They're loosening up. They're redefining what they mean by, for example, external service provider. Because under the final rule, if it doesn't store, process, and transmit CUI or security protection data, it doesn't even like exist.
Mhm.
It could be just a SaaS application. You show it on your approved software list and call it a day.
Mhm.
It used to not be like that under the JSVA. So from that perspective, for those listening at home, like, take heart.
Mhm.
It's getting a little. I think it's getting a little easier and more reasonable. But one of the, I'll give you an example of one of the inconsistencies. So like during one of the assessments, one of the assessors, they accepted 313's data flow diagram. I mean, very well known control.
Mhm.
You have to have a data flow diagram,
Mhm.
understand where CUI is allowed to go and not go. The MSP that they were using was not on that. They are not authorized to access the CUI, grant themselves permission to SharePoint, anything like that. They're just there to perform their white glove IT services,
Mhm.
call it a day. And when we got to 313.16, the assessor balked the company because the MSP did not prove that they had FIPS mode running on their endpoints that aren't allowed to access CUI. And 313.16 is the data at rest for CUI data. So you could see, like, they're not authorized to have it. Why everything else is encrypted with FIPS validated cryptography? Why does this? Yeah, why does the MSP and their endpoints have to have that? They're just logging in to do some assessment work, or not assessment, but technical work. No CUI is going there, and 313.11, 313.8, 313.16 is all about protecting CUI.
Mhm.
So you get what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
those are some of the nuances that were fleshed out, but to get back to the original question, I think OSCs, especially small OSCs, can take heart, at least that they're getting more lenient. That's not to say don't implement the requirements. Absolutely implement the requirements, and implement them well. But and get help, and learn. If you don't know what the requirements mean and what they really require, seek help. But I, I would take heart, and if you've done your best, you've done your due diligence. Also remember, there's a two business week reevaluation period.
Yep.
To where, if the assessor that you choose, which by the way, shop around for, if the assessor that you choose decides that they don't agree with your implementation, then you got some time to get
Yeah.
the thing sorted out.
Yeah, and I mean, I think anybody who's in the space and has seen some of the, we'll call them early security assessment reports that were coming out from some C3POs, they were overscoping. You're right. You're absolutely hitting on. I mean, totally inconsistent from what others are doing, and that is something that will
Yeah.
have to fix itself as time goes on. And you're right. The experience does matter. We're big fans. We always recommend work with, whether it's external providers or consultants, or both, all, and find people who have been on both sides of the table. Like, make sure
Absolutely.
that sat in that chair that you're in, but also is now on this side, has gone through the experience and stuff. Those details do matter. But thank you for highlighting.
Yeah.
It's not all peaches and cream.
It's not.
It's going to be, there's going to be some frustrations. There's going to be some oversight. There's going to be some underestimated areas. I know your guys' tool is great for helping with that, because it makes it a lot easier than spreadsheets and things getting
Yes.
updated by somebody when they shouldn't be,
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. And who's doing what on assessment day matters a ton, especially when you have external providers that are
Yes.
not in house. So what last question then. But what without getting too much into it, what went well? Like, what part did you say, like you said earlier, like validation yourself, is you and the company saying that I'm just so glad that went that way, because that's what we've been trying to do.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So one of the control, and this is one that came to mind. One of the controls, 312.3, is the requirement to continuously monitor. I wrote a post on it earlier this month on LinkedIn. And that is always, for small businesses, a challenging one, because a lot of them don't have things like configuration management database scanners and discovery tools and things like that to consistently monitor, even at the OS level, like settings.
Yeah.
Like they don't have that. And unless they pay a lot of money, they won't.
Mhm.
So one of the things that was that I developed as part of the implementation was a manual procedure that is a quarterly review of a quarter of the controls against the SSP, where they rigorously read the SSP requirements and go make sure that that's still true in your environment. But we had still yet to see that like validated as a real way that assessors were like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, that works. And that was one that I was like, boom shakalaka, that happened, it worked. So that was one of the things. And so there were a lot of things like that where, getting back to that point earlier, they are, I truly believe, loosening up a little bit, sometimes a little too loose. But yeah, I mean, a lot of things like that went well, where they validated our approach and we're happy with the perspective that is practical and not costly.
Yeah.
So when you write, like, for example, Microsoft Forms, using Microsoft Forms as like a logic app that connects the output of that form to like a SharePoint list. Those are fundamental ways that you can get through those procedure requirements and have those records
That's right.
at hand.
I agree. Well, thank you for spending time. I know we could sit here forever and talk about this stuff. So
I could.
Really appreciate you spending some time. Enjoy the rest of the conference. I'm sure we'll see each other again at future conferences. But where do people go if they want to know more about not just Steven and IntelliGRC, but where do they find information on you guys and where they can connect with you?
Yeah, so I mean, IntelliGRC.com. People can go there. We also have a LinkedIn page, and then Steven Molter, I'm on LinkedIn. I try to be pretty active on there, but when we're heads down on a project, I don't get as many posts out as I like, but I'm hoping to speed that up now that we just got through another CMMC with a 110.
Nice. Congratulations. Yeah, it's hearing a lot more of that, and we're going to hear a lot more of that coming up. We have to, because we got to make sure these are working and it's going well. So, all right. Well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. And if you ever will come back on, we'll probably have the same conversation and see how other experiences you have. This is going to be a reoccurring theme. So really appreciate your time, man.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode, and make sure to subscribe to the Cuick 10 podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and check us out on YouTube as well. For more information about Cuick Trac, visit our website at www.cuicktrac.com. That's CuickTrac.com.